Hi guys, this is Pythia Serpentis, and today I'm making my first YouTube video. I'm going to be talking about a case that's really close to my heart, and I'm really hoping for closure someday soon. The case is the Mackenzie Branham case. Mackenzie Branham was 8 years old and died on April 27, 2006 in a house fire. She was at her mom's house. Her parents were divorced, and the mother's boyfriend, and the dog all escaped the fire unharmed. Unfortunately, Mackenzie was left behind to die in the fire in the house, and no one got her out in time. She was sexually assaulted, they found sometime later, in a coroner's report that was released to the public. Statements from the coroner's report have surfaced, and when interviewed, when the coroner interviewed the firefighters, they claimed in the coroner's report that it took the mom 15 to 20 minutes to tell them Mackenzie was inside of the burning home. She had gotten into her truck with her boyfriend and her dog, parked it across the street, and didn't interact with any of the firefighters, from my understanding, which may or may not be true. The purpose of this video isn't to make anyone look guilty or hurt any feelings. It's more about what happened that night and the possibility of closure happening eventually. Many people wonder if this case is a police cover-up, and I'm not usually one to buy into conspiracy theories, but there's some really good reason to consider that, because evidence such as Mackenzie's clothing was somehow destroyed while in the possession of the police department while the case was an active, ongoing investigation. No one has ever been charged in connection with this crime, and the alleged suspects' family members were supposedly working for the police department at the time of Mackenzie's death. Mackenzie was 8 years old. I think I already said that, but she was in a ninth house perfection year. I would love to show you guys Mackenzie's natal chart, but I don't know how to turn my camera around. So I will go ahead and I will put a link up under the YouTube video so that you can look for yourself. If you have anything to contribute or anything that you see in the astrology chart, please comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on the situation. Mackenzie was in a ninth house perfection year, which brings sorrow and losses through a parent. That is one of the rulerships of the ninth house, according to Bill Rex, which he says in his lovely The Rulership book. I recommend that book to everybody. It's a really great little investment. The ninth house also rules the profession of one's secret enemies, foreign people from other countries and areas, the judicial system, lawsuits, legal affairs, the media, strangers, television, and the Supreme Court. Aries rules Mackenzie's ninth house. And Aries rules occupations connected to fire, law enforcement, and any armed services. Saturn sits in the ninth house and is fall in the sign of Aries. And because Saturn is in the ninth house, it shows delay, hindrance, frustration, and neglect pertaining to a court decision or legal attention in regards to Mackenzie's case. But the lunar mansion that Saturn is in foretells of a positive resolution to conflict, typically. So maybe there will be some forward movement with this situation. And I sure hope there is, because this little girl deserves some justice, and whoever did this needs to be held accountable. Mars rules the ninth house, and so we are going to take a look at Mars. Sadly, Mars is involved in an unfortunate T-square with an opposition to the Moon and a square from both the Moon and Mars to Venus, which is the apex planet of the T-square. So all of that tension between the Moon And Mars manifests by shooting out through Venus, which is oddly conjunct the part of fatality in Mackenzie's chart. The moon opposite Mars implies Mackenzie's self-expression usually ends in conflict for her. Arguments and emotional disputes were likely a part of life with her mother, because the moon rules mothers and women in general that belong in our daily lives. It also rules our home environment and domestic settings. It seems loved ones were probably often angry or confrontational in the home environment. And it seems loved ones were probably often very angry and confrontational. Out of control anger or rage can occur, and there might have been a tendency for people to be a little bit antagonistic to Mackenzie in her home environment, like regarding her mom. The moon does not rule the father, it rules the mom. The sun rules the father and has nothing to do with the stressful aspects in her chart. It would imply that it was a very volatile domestic environment. It is a dangerous aspect to have in a natal chart, and I know I'm probably going to get a little flack from other astrologers for saying that, because a lot of people claim when you say things like that you can't manifest its potential positively and this and that, but I've really never seen anything great come from the moon opposite Mars. Mars opposite the moon heightens the threat of violence in a chart. It heightens the threat of fires in a chart. House fires specifically, because the moon does rule the home and Mars does rule fires. I always encourage my clients to get smoke detectors and make sure that their smoke detectors are working when they have this aspect, or even if Mars is transiting the moon or aspecting it through solar arc. I always recommend that, because, it doesn't always have to mean death, but it's not very fortunate. It's not a good aspect to have. Transiting Pluto opposed Venus and squared Mars, the ninth house ruler. This created a grand cross in Mackenzie's chart, which is probably one of the hardest configurations you can come across. It activated that natal T-square, and it was happening between the 5th house, the 11th house, the 2nd house, and the 8th house. It was applying and would have come exact on July 28th of 2006, and then it would have become exact again in October of 2006. And Mackenzie may have felt that things were out of control in her relationships with others, and given the fact Mackenzie was being abused and was found raped, things probably were out of control for her at that time. It's kind of a time where problems that have been buried in the past resurface, feelings of rejection. Pluto rules rape, Venus rules sex, and they often are in contact in the charts of victims who have been abused sexually. I've seen it many times, but not always. It doesn't always manifest like that. So, transiting Pluto was also squaring the natal moon between the 5th and the 8th house. And that aspect was actually exact on April 27th, 2006, the morning Mackenzie died. So I believe it's a pretty relevant aspect. It set off the T-square. It created a lot of emotional tension in which events, people, or memories from the past will often return to haunt you. This aspect can bring painful public recognition, like recognition for bad reasons. And tensions would be likely in family relationships, particularly with women or in the home, because again, it involves the moon. Asteroid Hermes is conjunct the moon natally, and that also sets off the Mars T-square further. Hermes was the god of thieves, commerce, liars, travelers. Pluto was transiting opposite Venus, and this aspect began in March through April of 2005. And that made me curious if maybe that's when Mackenzie began being abused. And it made me wonder if maybe the abuse had been ongoing for some time, um, or, like, did it start that night? Like, was it just a random attack, Um, I don't know. Um, but, but given, given that aspect with Pluto squaring the moon, one would have to wonder. Um, Persephone is also conjunct the south node, and the nodes are also involved in this T square, conjunct the moon and Mars. And, you know, that gives Persephone brings about situations that you attract as you approach a transition or separation. Um, it it embodies the mythology of Persephone and Hades. Ceres was Persephone's mom, and one day she was out picking flowers, and Hades, the lord of the underworld, saw Persephone and thought she was so beautiful that he abducted her and took her down to the underworld with him and made her his wife. Uh, Ceres was so angry she killed all the crops because she was the goddess of crops, like in agriculture. Um, she killed everything, and there was great famine in the land, and she demanded to have Persephone back and appealed to the other gods. Eventually, they sort of resolved the dispute, and Persephone was allowed to return to Earth in the spring until the fall, and then she was sent back to the underworld to live with Hades for 6 months. Um, the mythology does embody abduction. It does embody sexual abuse, and to see it applied to an 8-year-old girl's chart is just so sad. Um, Asteroid Tisiphone is conjunct the moon, also triggering this T square. And the meaning of asteroid Tisiphone is to seek justice for crimes against kinship and family, fairness, how and where and if one gets what they deserve. And hopefully someone gets what they deserve pretty soon here. Because this beautiful little girl, her case, it's been cold for so long. It's been 13 years. And she's got a dad that's out there fighting every single day to get answers. And I would really, really like to see him get them. And to see Tisiphone with the moon gives me some hope that he will eventually get those answers. So the part of fortune is also opposite Pluto in her natal chart. This is a really, really common configuration in the charts of crime victims. The path of fortune represents our health, our physical well-being, and events that happen to us that are out of our control and inflicted by others. There's Hidalgo, an asteroid that is involved with this aspect. He's conjunct Pluto, and it's kind of odd to me. It implies that maybe Mackenzie was being abused and was going to tell, because it does rule secrecy and effective disclosure. So that makes me wonder if it was ongoing and maybe she was going to disclose that information to somebody. Maybe she did, and that's why she was murdered. I'm not sure. Another odd thing Hidalgo can show us is possible contact with Latin American or Spanish people or Mexican people and their food and culture. It also can hint toward revolution concerning the government, because Hidalgo did create a Hidalgo did create a revolution. I really encourage anybody to look up the meanings of these asteroids. You can Google them. Martha Lane Westcott has a great resource that's available for free online in regards to the meaning of these asteroids. They're very simple to use, and I really recommend you guys check out her website. It's great. In Mackenzie's chart, the sun is high leg, according to Bonatti and Ptolemy. The sun is also with two fixed stars, Aldebaran and the northern bullseye. High leg is referred to as the giver of life. The sun represents Mackenzie's life force. That's what that means. It is actually used to calculate the length of life in some of the older astrological techniques, like the length of life technique. In aspects to unfortunate planets or from unfortunate planets and places such as the part of death, Mars, Saturn, Anareta, that is said to imply that the native is in danger. Now, Pluto is a malefic too, and in Mackenzie's natal chart, she has Pluto opposing her sun, the giver of life. At the time of her death, Uranus activated this natal aspect from the 8th house, and that house rules death, autopsies, cousins from the mother's side, and funerals. Uranus is a really sudden, fateful planet that brings up the unexpected. The fixed star Aldebaran was said to shorten a native's life threefold. And the legend of the star kind of goes like this. So Jupiter was out doing whatever Jupiter does, and he assumed the form of a bull and mingled with the herd when a beautiful woman named Europa appeared, and he became infatuated with her. So they were all on the seashore, and Europa noticed how tame and sweet that the bull was. She decided she would get on the bull and ride it, whereupon Jupiter rushed into the sea and stole her away to Crete. According to other accounts, Taurus represents Lo, who Jupiter turned into a cow in order to deceive his wife Juno, who he constantly cheated on and was very abusive to. So somehow we may find some connection to that mythology in Mackenzie's case, and maybe we won't, but often we'll see the fixed stars and their influence kind of line up with the events that have or will happen. So Aldebaran to the sun is said to increase the likelihood of violent victimization or death, or give the native great honor through violence. The northern bullseye is said to be a good star, though, and hopefully this implies eventual closure for Mackenzie, her father, and the rest of us. It was really difficult for me to tell when there might be closure because she really didn't have anything significant coming up. And usually after a person has passed away, you can still look at their natal chart and it will still impact the events on Earth that surround that person. I usually, when a case is going to close, you're going to see like an eclipse to some point, maybe something that indicates finality and closure, like a loosening of the bond. But I don't see anything like that coming up in Mackenzie's case. I do plan to look a little bit harder and try to narrow down a time frame in regards to the case and whether or not anything is going to transpire anytime soon because I'm getting impatient. Aldebaran with the sun is said to shorten the life threefold, the life of the native. So it would indicate somebody having a shorter lifespan. Anyway, I guess that's all I've got for now. If you guys have any questions about Mackenzie's case, or there are any topics you would like to know more about that I didn't cover, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think or want to know. And I will do more readings and look closer at the chart. And if you know anybody who is missing or has a cold case and you would like a reading and think it would be helpful to the family, please message me here on YouTube, leave a comment down below, and I will get to that reading. They are always free. I never charge any money. And hopefully, if you need help, you'll come to me and let me know. Thanks for watching. Please be a pal and hit like and subscribe. Thank you.